All right, coming to you all live for the first time from our new studio on Veterans Memorial Boulevard. So excited to be in here. Kind of show you guys a first peek of what we're putting together here. If you could see the whole thing, it's kind of a chair, a plant, a mic, and an empty room right now. But we wanted to test it out. And look, we built this company with you guys. We did this together. It's us. It's you. So we've never been afraid of showing you guys our work in progress. Well, it's in progress because this whole thing is a work in progress, and we're just getting started. But it's an exciting time for us. Shout out to Sue. Sue's here. Edwin's here. We're going to go through your questions for the next 30, 45 minutes. You can ask them in the chat. Send them to me on Twitter. I'm going to be looking there too. And we're going to kind of go through everything. Might not be perfect with this stream. Might be some echo, some glare, whatever. We're going to figure it out. We're testing everything out, and we're trying to figure out where we got to go from here. But it's exciting times here. We got Matt Bowers behind us, great neighbor. Got the bottle of Hard Hide here because he was one of the first guys that ever believed in us. So I wanted to make sure that was on the table for the inaugural stream. Shout out to my guy, John, for believing us from the beginning. And shout out to y'all for just kind of putting us in this position. It's kind of unbelievable to be here, to have like Mercedes-Benz, Barnes & Noble, Matt Bowers, like all these places. We're in that neighborhood now. And a few years ago when we were starting this, it just never seemed possible. So this is kind of a big moment for me. It's surreal, and shout out to y'all for putting us in this position. So thank you. We're going to keep building it, and a lot more to come from this space. So yeah, this is the first time from here. So we're going to just start digging into some of these questions on YouTube. We got the super chat. So if you want to hit up the super chat, you can get your question answered for sure, as long as it's not too crazy. But hit that up, and we'll keep an eye out for those for sure. So, yeah, the first question, I think this is kind of a great one. And it is, I think it's probably the most important question. I might kind of touch on this yesterday during our show, but will a new OC hurt Carr more than keeping Pete around, having to learn another new system and all? And, I do think it is kind of fascinating. If you look at Carr throughout his career, every year, the first year in the system, he has struggled tremendously. And then the second year in that system, he settles in and gets better and keeps going. So if there was any type of argument for keeping Carmichael in the system around, it would be that. It would be that I think that it just kind of puts him in a better position to succeed and to do his thing and to kind of grow within the offensive system and build on the success. And it's undeniable the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season how much better he played. 75% completion rate during that time, 12 touchdowns, 1 interception over the last 4 weeks. He played great. And granted, you got to look at the competition. I mean, that is always part of it, but he settled into the system. They started blocking better. They figured out how to incorporate play action to kind of help the offensive line and make them all perform a little bit better. So if you were to make an argument for keeping the staff around, they made that argument over the last 4 weeks of the season. The thing is, though, is I think that you got to look for a way to kind of change things up a little bit. Maybe bring in, if Carmichael sticks around, you keep the system in place. Maybe bring somebody in. Like Gruden would be someone that could build on it, and you wouldn't have to do wholesale changes. So that would be an interesting way to kind of go about it, and then see how you can build it from there. But I do think that we are going to see changes on the offensive staff. They are out of town through Monday, so I think maybe not necessarily Monday we'll hear things, but I think at some point this week, upcoming week, we're going to start hearing about some changes. I mean, I just don't think you can run it back exactly the same. There were too many things that just didn't quite work out, that were a little bit wrong, and I think they need to try to figure out how to get better on that side of the ball and build something for the long term, not just a little patch here and there. I mean, if they're going to do this, it needs to be built to last. And if you're going to make a change, you got to get the change right now, because you can't start this process over with Derek Carr again. He needs to hit the ground. He needs to get comfortable in this system, whatever it's going to be, and they need to start going from there. But there was progress this year, and I think that makes it a little bit more interesting, because 6 weeks ago, it seemed an absolute certainty that they were going to change the offense and have to do something different. And then you see the play over the last 4 weeks, and things looked a little bit better. So it's going to be fascinating to see what they kind of do moving forward with that stuff. So any draft prospects that catch my eye, waiting a bit for the final list. Yeah, I mean, Matt, man, the next time we do this, I'm going to have a detailed answer for you. But I mean, right now, I mean, I'm still like in the Saints season, doing the autopsy on what went wrong, what went right, where they need to go, what they need to do differently. Man, I can't think of his name right now. The Notre Dame tackle is somebody that I like a lot. I think that's somebody that I think could probably be a potential long-time starter for a team, probably going to be really good. They got to go out. They got to get some pass rushers. Obviously, it's almost cherry picking to just like talk about quarterbacks, but Jaden Daniels, I think Penix, like maybe in the second round, is somebody that could be interesting. I don't think Drake May is going to fall or anything like that. Someone else I like, but any of the quarterbacks, I'm a fan of any of the quarterbacks to bring them in. But I think the list really kind of needs to start and stop. And for me, quarterback's always number one. But outside of that, I think it needs to start and stop at D end and offensive tackle. And I think that's where, when I start diving into draft prospects, probably, usually the end of the month around Senior Bowl time, that's where all my attention is going to go. And I think that's where I'm going to start building my list, because I think that's where they absolutely have to go. But I think those positions are important enough that they need to address them in free agency as well. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see what they prioritize in free agency. You like to plug those holes before you get to the draft so you aren't forced into drafting one. But both those positions are so expensive that I think it becomes, difficult to settle into to having to draft one of them. Or I'm sorry, settling into having to sign one of them. So, yeah, I mean, if they get forced into that situation in the draft, that's how you end up making mistakes. That's how you end up drafting Trevor Penning. But if you can sign a couple guys, but again, they're going to be so expensive. They can clear, I did the math the other day. I think they can clear easily $30-40 million in spending space. So if you wanted to go about it, but that's where you end up spending big money, and that's how, I think you get into cap trouble too. So there's not a good answer here, but I think one of the two, they got to sign at least in free agency and then try to draft the other. And when you do that, I think that's how you end up in the best situation. All right. Let's keep looking here. There was one about Penning that I wanted to answer coming up here. They said, was Loomis and DA mentioning Trevor Penning needs developed. Is that an indictment of Doug Marrone as offensive line coach? Do you think his job is in jeopardy? I think everybody's job is in jeopardy. I mean, on the offensive staff, I think everybody's job. Jeopardy is a strong word, but I think everybody's being evaluated. And I'm sorry, but you go up and down the list, there's really nobody that I would be surprised to see go, just if they wanted to change things up. I think things were shaky enough the whole entire season. But again, coming back to it, the O-line got better over the last 4 weeks of the season. So this idea 6 weeks ago, it was like, yeah, everybody has to go. And now you're in a spot where it's like, man, I don't know. But, I do think if the coaching isn't working with Trevor Penning, it's almost important enough that you need to go back and look at it and see what you can do. I don't know if that's bringing in a whole new coach. Is it bringing in another assistant? Is it doing some type of thing differently? The credit to Doug Marrone would be that he saved Cesar Ruiz. So it's not like Marrone's a bad coach. You've seen his work. It's just it's not working with Trevor Penning. And is that a coaching issue? Is it a player issue? Is it both? Are there different ways to go about it? There's a lot of questions that need to be answered. But I think as you go down that list of offensive coaches, throughout the week, and I'm not hating on any of them. I think they're all good in their own right. You've seen good things from all of them, but in their own sense, I could see each and every one of them going. And there's merit to it, and I think there's merit to keeping some of them too. There's a couple that I would probably definitely replace, but I think that there's an argument for keeping a handful of these guys. And Doug Marrone, it's a clear one. Cesar Ruiz got a lot better with him when he came in. So he does know how to coach, but it's not working with the most important player on the team, arguably. And if you can save Trevor Penning, you save a draft pick, you save a lot of money, your team's a lot better. But I think we're at a point where you got to try to replace him because you just don't know. So it's going to be a fascinating week to see how they kind of go through with everything, because they could legitimately replace any of these guys. I want the Saints on Hard Knocks. No, I do not want them on Hard Knocks, man. That stuff season. I like the in season, the training camp one. You can keep them away. The in season will be fascinating, just because it would just be interesting to see how they kind of work behind the scenes and how some of that stuff goes. Mike asked, "Is May going to be back?" Yeah, I talked to him during the clean-out day. He said he was almost healthy enough to play in the finale. He was just kind of waiting for him to activate him, but they just kind of ran out of runway. No surgery for him, but he is healthy. Paul's asking if Gruden comes in and Pete is moved to a different role. Do you see them appointing someone else on staff to OC and Gruden assumes oversight role? Look, if they bring in Gruden to be the OC, let him be the OC. Like, don't do this half-measure thing that you did with Rob Ryan and DA before, where you're in a spot and you got someone looking over their shoulder the whole time to see if the other guy's going to take him out, and then he eventually takes him out, and it undermines his power with the players, and it creates dissension and all this other stuff. Like, if you're going to make a strong move, give the man the job, and just let him be the offensive coordinator of the team. Let him have the power, let him run it. have the, stand on it. Like if you don't want Pete to be the OC, you don't want Pete to be all encompassing power, stand on it and just make the move and believe in something. So I think if they do that, they just need to do it, and it needs to be like a real thing, and make sure that's the situation. Like just do it. Last year they tried to do Cody's season, it didn't work out, and it was just awkward. It was kind of who's in charge, who's not in charge, and then you have people fighting over power. Like I don't think Pete and Gruden would do that, and I think Pete's someone that kind of just knows how to fall in a role and play in the background. So it would theoretically probably work better than either one of those situations because he's just kind of been in that role forever with Sean Payton. But I think if you're going to do it, just do it. Who was the Saints' weakest link on the offensive line? I mean, it was probably, I think if you can replace James Hurst, you're probably in a better situation. Like, he's just limited, just what he gets the most out of his talent. He's really solid. But, yeah, I mean, I think that's probably the weakest spot on the team. And if you could replace him, I think you probably would. But, look, they need a left tackle. Pete's got to come back. He's a free agent. They got to try to keep him. So it's across the board. I mean, Ramchek's hurt. That's a huge one. Looking at Twitter at some of the questions, Brian asked if they'll upgrade their scouting. Drafting seems lackluster post-2017. All right, let's get the draft list up. Look, I think that there's probably an argument for bringing in more talent. I know they were talking to a handful of guys that lost their jobs, like they kind of always do, and they go through and try to see if there's places to get different people. If you look at a lot of their like top scouts, there are a lot of guys that were in other places in higher roles, and they kind of pick them up, and that's a way to hack when you have a team that's very committed to spending money, investing in the process, and all that stuff. So that's always a place where you can spend a little bit more money if you have an owner willing to open up their pockets. So that's good. But I think that Jeff Ireland's a really good scout. Look, he's not the one making the decisions in the room. I mean, like I know for pretty strongly that a couple of the players that people are mad about in recent drafts, like those were coaches overruling kind of what the scouts put on their grading because they fell in love with someone, and that tends to happen at times. So it's not all Jeff Ireland. Cody Rager, who's kind of Jeff Ireland's right-hand man, like scouting circles, he is one of the more highly regarded talent evaluators throughout the NFL. And that isn't like a local thing. It's like talking to people throughout. It is it's a spot where people, they look at him and they like people talk about his evaluations around the league. That's how good he is at his job. So I don't think that it's necessarily a scouting issue, but there's no doubt about it that the drafting in recent years has been a little bit poor. I mean, I think there's a couple of bright spots in this draft. We don't know enough about Foskey, but Brzee had a pretty good rookie year. Kendrick Miller looked really great at the end. And I think Jordan Howden and A.T. Perry both look like hits for 5th and 6th rounders. Like even if they just stay the same, like you're getting something out of them. So they're hits. Olave's obviously a hit. Penning a miss. Alontae Taylor I think is going to end up being a hit, even though end of the season was a little bit rocky. So the last two drafts were a little bit better. 21, I mean, obviously Peyton Turner is a miss to this point and probably overall. Werner's been solid. Adebo's a great starter. So I don't know. I mean, like I think the drafting could be better. I think they definitely hit a lull. 2018 was kind of a whole entire missed draft because you didn't sign Davenport to another contract. 19, you got McCoy. Everybody else is gone. 2020, I think, is an extremely underwhelming draft. But, I think there's a couple pieces in the last few. Penning kind of just brings the whole curve down, though, and it's just such a miss that it's a huge bring down on those ones. All right, looking at some of these ones, chances people from the front office leave. I think if Kai Harley was ever going to leave, I think Carolina's kind of a situation where it could possibly happen because they kind of want an overseer of everything, and I think he'd be a great overseer of everything. So that's kind of a situation to watch a little bit. I think if Denver opens up, Ireland leaving becomes a strong possibility. He's interviewing in with the Chargers, so it's definitely possible that he ends up leaving. But it's too early, I think, to handicap any of that stuff. Do you see the Saints looking to get a punter in the draft like Taylor in Iowa? They just finished second in Rick Gosling's special teams rankings, which is kind of, I don't know, it's crazy to me because like optically Lou Hedley's punts just didn't satisfy, but it turned, they covered them so well. There was no return yardage. Whatever they did this year worked in its own way. It wasn't traditional. It was untraditional. I kind of hated it the whole season, but it's hard to argue with the results. So I don't know. I mean, I think punter's something that's definitely open. And then obviously I think Groupie got better as the season went on. Those misses from 29 yards are like unbelievably bad. But overall, I think that he had a solid rookie season. And you know, I think he's going to be I think he's going to be a good pro for a while. How do I feel about the Saints trio receivers? I think it's one of the bright spots on the team going forward. Yeah, this is a good question. If Mickey Loomis thinks it's, quote, stupid to think DA lost the locker room, then why did he need to have to talk to the team at the end of the season? I mean, look, there's obviously issues in that locker room. Like saying they lost it, maybe, I don't know, that might be strong, but I know that he lost pieces of it. I mean, I know there's a handful, like we're talking about players getting traded and going away because like it wasn't all the way cohesive and together. So it's definitely not a crazy talking point because things started to fracture a little bit in there. There's no doubt about it. I wrote a story about it this week. I mean, some guys went to the front office to talk about issues they were having with the coaching staff. Like, so there was fear in stuff going on with it. So that's definitely something that's a true talking point. Like, I don't think he lost the team, but I think that, you know, things got rocky this year for sure. And at the end of that 3-game losing streak, it was definitely at a point where I think if they had lost one more game, that like it really could have shattered. Like it was really that close. It was really that frustrated. People were really talking about those kind of things, and then they won. And the winning is always the cure all. And then by the end of the season, some of the people that were frustrated were talking about how, you know, bought in they were. So that tends to be how these things go. They never quit on each other. I think that kind of keeps everything together. But like to act like everything is okay is crazy. I mean, it's definitely, you know, if the GM has to go in there and give a message of you got to buy in, I mean, I think that kind of speaks for itself. I mean, you don't have to do that when everybody's bought in. I mean, you don't have to tell people that, you know, to come to Jesus when they're sitting next to Jesus. I mean, that just isn't the way it goes. So, yeah, absolutely. I think it's definitely something. But look, the season's going to end. He's going to be the coach. Like, I think if they get the right hires, I think you come out, you win, you do well. Any of that stuff is cured. And then if you start 0-3, you know, 1-4, I think you're back in that point where it might fracture. So they just have to get this offseason right and win games, and then that's going to be the thing that kind of decides it. Everybody keeps asking, like, what are the changes that are going to happen? Like, I'm not ever going to be comfortable just, like, being like, I'm going to guess that this guy's going to get fired because, I mean, it is kind of, you know, is real life to these people. And that just kind of seems a little bit unseemly to me. Is the brown paper bag coming back for the New Orleans Saints? I mean, they won 9 games, guys. Like, I know. Like, I know that nobody wants to hear it. They played a soft schedule. Quarterbacks were hurt when they played the team. Star players were hurt when they played team. Wasn't a real, like, strong 9 wins. I agree with all that, but, like, they won 9 games. Like, I don't know. Like, nobody was wearing a brown paper bag when they went 7-9 3 years in a row. Like, I don't know. Like, I just don't think it's that bad. It's not good, but it's not that bad. Like, I think there's a place in between where we can talk about it being bad and how shaky everything is and how, you know, it's at a critical juncture and it could possibly go to the brown paper bag era if they get stuff wrong. But, like, they aren't there. They won 9 games. They were above 500. Like, damn, man. Like, if that's brown paper bag era, like, times are good. Like, times are good. Like, it's good to be in a place where the expectations are that high. But yeah, I don't think it's there yet. I mean, I don't agree that Mickey's stunning the growth of the franchise. I think there's like arguments to be made that things could change, be different, all that stuff. But like, I don't think Mickey is the problem. I think Mickey's done a good job historically. But like for me, this was the point. And it's like, I think he's doubled down on DA kind of at this point. And so now DA has to get it right because I think this is what you judge Mickey on. Like, I think you were going to look at it and say, like, all right, he makes a change and he gets them out of this, or they stay in it, and he's deciding to stay in it. So I think this is kind of what you judge him on. But, like, look, if Mickey went out and, like, hired another great coach, or if DA turns it out to be that great coach, they win another title, like, you're talking about, like, a Hall of Fame GM at that point. But if he gets it wrong, I think it kind of undermines, like, a little bit of some of the stuff to this point. And it's like, well, all right, he got this coach right, this quarterback right. But, look, the one thing about Mickey that I think is crazy, though, is that he's never gotten credit for anything that's ever happened with the team. It's always been Sean. It's always been Jeff Ireland. It's always been Drew Brees. It's been Terry Fontenot finding people. It's been Michael Parrington finding people. It's Kai working the cap. He hired all these people. So all these people that do these things that make it work, like no one ever gives Mickey the credit for it. They give him the blame. But I mean, I think he deserves a little bit more credit than he gets for some of the stuff they've done. But like obviously the team's not in a great place right now. So it's gonna fall on deaf ears that, they had the 2017 draft and Kai Harley invented this way to work the cap. But like those are Mickey's hires, man. Like he put that together. Looking for a few more questions here. Who do I like? Tampa versus the Eagles. It's tough, man. The Eagles are in a terrible place right now. So, I don't know. Like, I think they could just turn it on and kind of win a game. Somebody's asking a cap question, so I'm running clock here while I look up their cap stuff real quick, just so I can answer it with detail. But I think, yeah, man. I think the Eagles could just kind of turn it on, and figure things out very, very quickly. But it's scary for them right now. They've just kind of fallen apart very quickly, and I don't know where it's going to go for them. I mean, I think the Saints could have, like, I liked the Saints making the playoffs because I thought they could have beat Tampa, or they could have beat the Eagles for sure, but they didn't. But now Tampa might. But Tampa's not in a good place either. They kind of look like they were falling apart at the end of the season. So I don't know. Like I'll probably take the Eagles in that game for sure. All right. Someone was asking about the cap. I mean, look, they're like with some of the stuff they did, they're about probably like $74 million over the cap right now, and then they got a decision to make with Jameis. So that's another place where they could take off like a $10 million hit. Mike Thomas is another one that's, if he leaves, that one hits. If they keep him, it kind of stays. But they can go down this list. Like, it's not that bad. And it's never that bad because there's always a way out and there's always a way to create a ton of cap space. The questions we got to ask now is, like, is it worth it and does it make sense given where they're at? And, I think for me, it's kind of reached the first juncture where it's kind of like, I don't know if it makes sense to keep going all in. Like, maybe you should pay some of this off. It's kind of deteriorated a little bit. However, I don't think they're going to make that decision. I think they go back. They're all in. I think they're going to try to build out their offensive line. They're going to look at Derek Carr in the last 4 weeks of the season and say, if you have this protection and you have this running game and you have these receivers, like, he can do this, this, and this. And that's how they're going to sell it. And, it could work, but I don't know if it will. I don't have the faith in it. Like, I've been fooled too many times over the last 3 years to kind of be like, yeah, they can do this and it's going to work. So for me, I got to see it. I have doubts at this point. I would try to do kind of what Tampa did this year and get a couple of the pieces, pay off some of the cap, see how it goes, and go from there. But they aren't going to do that. And, I think Mickey feels like he needs to win. I feel like DA feels like he needs to win. So they're going to do everything they can to kind of keep this thing going. And I think that's what I think that's how they're going to play the offseason. I think it's going to be an aggressive offseason because they feel like they're close, but I don't necessarily. And the positions where they need help, I think, are so high value that it's going to be tough. But we're going to see. It's going to be an interesting offseason. All right, let's see. Let's find like two more. Texans versus Cowboys Super Bowl. I would love to see the Texans in there, man. It would be interesting. I see my guy John O in here. Shout out to you, man. Shout out on your success, man. Keep doing your thing. Mickey was working the cap before Kai was known. Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. He doesn't get any credit for any of the success. It's kind of crazy, but I mean, that's just is what it is, man. He's played the background for so long. He hasn't put himself out there for it, and that's just kind of who Mickey is. So that kind of comes with the territory. But I mean, I think people need to recognize some of the good stuff he's done, man. It's just, I don't think it's ever talked about. But I'm not trying to ride for anybody. It's just kind of crazy how those comments come. Air fryer or oven? We're oven people. Will Darren Rizzi remain with the Saints? I hope so. He's a great man. The thing with Darren Rizzi, they let Deontay Hardy go, great returner, Pro Bowler, all this stuff, and they replaced him with the guy that was better. Is crazy. And they were scouting Rashid Shaheed while they had Deontay Hardy on the team, running their process. And Rizzi does this thing every year where he does his study trying to find returners. And I mean, it's probably the one thing that they do better than anything. I mean, back to back, just home runs. But Shaheed becoming a first team All Pro is kind of crazy that you just replaced him with that. Any chance of Vrabel or Bill Belichick? Nope. They're keeping DA, man. And I think you're going to see Belichick in Atlanta. It just kind of feels like there's too much smoke there. But I don't know. If there's too much smoke around something with Bill, it's often something different. But it just feels like everything's pointing towards him going there. All right, let me see if I can find one more, and we're going to shut this thing down. Can the Rams beat the Lions? I'd like to see the Lions win for Dan Campbell. O-line first, one of the first 2 picks in the draft. I think it absolutely has to be. Absolutely has to be. Any new news on Gruden? No, but I mean, like I've heard that they were kind of like talking to him all season long. Just he was involved in different things. Not talking to him like about a job, but like he was involved all season long. It just kind of feels like that's something that they need to try to do. But hopefully we start getting some answers on a lot of this stuff coming up this week. I'm going to wrap this up here. Appreciate you guys, all your support. Thanks for showing up for our little test run here. We're going to be in the studio probably within a couple of weeks full time. We'll be back at the regular one this week. Have all your coverage on everything. If you aren't signed up for the website, make sure you hit that up, NewOrleans.Football/subscribe. As you can see, we're always investing in making our product better. Every dollar you spend kind of goes right back into the product. So thank you guys for all that. Kind of unbelievable that we're here, but we're here. All right. Thanks for tuning in.